Good morning, gentlemen. In our series of discussion on situation and a person, we would endeavor to talk about interaction with the situation and the person. We call it correlation, transaction, and other aspects of the system. As we have discussed, a situation is defined as a set of fleeting dynamic and movement structures that do not lie within a person but in the surroundings. We have already discussed. And then we came back and talked about it. The situation can be described by three parameters called cues, characteristics, and classes. And cues are called person, event, activities, role, location, state. This is how it can be described. Situation can be presumed or perceived as threat, stress, task, processing, fun, or mundane activities. And then the taxonomy for these situation characteristics can be based on the diamond, that is the deception, at intellect, A for adversity, M for mating, O for positivity, N for negativity, D for duty, and S for sociability. Based on B5, it can, or Big Five, we can also talk about dominance, aggression, negative effect, achievement, situation, and press. Then it can be, they are the various ways in which they can be, each situation can be described. When we talk about situation, even the traumatic situation is also a situation. Any event that we do in life is a situation. And finally, they can also be described in terms of lexical, that is the English is the language, then connective balance, adversity, importance, complexity, positive balance, and typicality. Okay. Now, having talked about it, and it is all the situation of main aim is how can we measure this situation, So these situations can be measured, the cues can be measured objectively by cameras, microphones. When I'm talking about, you are taking a photograph, that is self, or the photograph which is being shown to you. Then subjectively, it can be inquired about perceived even cues from the participant. How do you like it? What is the press? Was it threatening or not? That is how you get the cues about it. Then the characteristics can be found out by one in situ, that is being in present, those directly in the situation and affected in situ, that the interviewing officer, he is interacting with the individual directly in SSP. So directly asking a question and one-to-one he is finding out what the character, what question that he poses, how does the individual react, that is what for dialectical in situ. Then merely observing, just like you, people are performing the job and you are looking from the sideways, that is what the GTO, that is called juxta situation data. And finally, whatever written material you get it, and you can try and extrapolate what the characteristic of the situation or effect of the situation on individual is. That is called ex situ. That is what the psychologist really does it. Okay. SSB, for sure. So there are the three ways. SSB fortunately follows all three, because the interviewing officer, that is in presence, that in situ. GTO, that is juxta situum, and as far as psychology, ex situ, that is based upon the doji. So it can be, we can say physical presence, yes, yes, no. Personal experience, yes, yes, no. How the whole rated, all three of them can afford to define a situation and its effect on the individual. Now let's come back and talk about how does situation affect an individual, or how does individual affect the situation. When you look at this particular diagram, they call correlation, interaction, and transaction diagram. Here you have got a situation at time, some timeline T1, and you have got a person at that time T1. So based upon the individual, and there is certain amount of correlation exists between these two things, any situation. How did the correlation comes back? Because a person may have had some experience about such or situation, something alike to that, akin to that. So that is what you call correlation comes to the path A. Then these person would like to have, based upon situation, he would like to perform. There's certain outcome. That outcome comes into play. And that outcome is affected by the situation. Normally, if the situation was not present, the individual would have performed in a particular way, very deep. This is the path he would have followed. But this path is superimposed by the situation itself, that path D. Similarly, situation itself would have given certain outcome, and that gets affected by the person itself. It means situation affects the outcome, and person also affects the outcome. Number one. Number two, situation also modifies the person or the perception of the individual, and the person itself modifies the situation itself. So that means because the module, there's some different situation comes into play. We'll talk about it slightly later on. And finally, situation itself, therefore transaction leads to us another type of person T2, was at time T2. Though person remains the same, but his parameters, all those activities, and what you say is the result behavior changes. Similarly, person also have certain effect on the situation itself. So situation also changes from at time T1 to time T2. So we can say person, it can be any variable, like enduring stable case, momentary variable. Situation or any situation variable. We have already talked about enough of it. And outcome is any person's situation at time T1 and time T2. So they how the all arrows are so about it. Now, what does this mean? So we have already heard that behavior is a function of person and the situation. The word Kurt-Lewin formula talks about it. Person and situation can also show different relationships among themselves and two other variables, that is outcome. So among the person has got effect on situation has got effect on the person. And both in turn, independently or together, they have got some effect on the outcome that is available. Okay. That we have already said. Then we have talked of correlation between what? Correlation is between situation and person. This is what we call correlation. We talked about it here. Correlation, person and situation variables are concurrently associated with each other. Now, suppose you are on the road, and let's take an example, and someone has been bitten by a snake. The next time when he sees a snake, naturally he will get a scare. So there's certain amount of correlation between the snake and the person when he meets the next time. That is what is correlation. Then the interaction. Interaction is situation variable modulates the strength of relation between person variable and outcome variable and vice versa. When you look at it, so this is the person and outcome. If this situation is not there, then person would have performed this outcome would have been there. But this outcome has been modified by the situation itself. Say, for example, let's take, I was going on road. I would have walked through the road. Suddenly, I find a snake. What happened? My outcome had changes. I would not follow the same path. I will deviate the path. So that is how the situation affected the person. Now, how the situation gets affected by the person now? The situation was a snake on the road. Now, looking at the snake, the person now tries to either kill him or deviate from it. So as a result, the situation itself has changed. So the outcome, both because the person and situation has changed. That is what we call interaction. Now, let's see transaction. Person variable predict situation variables, and situation variable predict person variable across time. Means what? Person variables predict situation. Means if you have got a good personality, you will behave in a particular expected pattern. So that is the person will predict situation well. So if such situation comes, you will handle it according to your own strength or weaknesses that you've got. Now, next. Situation variable predict person variable. Now, if just like in a battle scenario, first and foremost, let's say we are all trained soldiers. We would like to act in a soldierly manner. Yes, fair enough. So if I see an enemy, I would like to shoot at him. That is my, because I have been trained for it. The person variable predicts that I'll shoot at the enemy. Very nice. Now what happens? Suddenly you find the counter firing has come into from the sides. As a result, now the reaction of the person which I would have done otherwise when the threat was not so much would again change. So now the person variable results in the situation variable change, and situation results into the person variable change. And finally, there is a fit between. There may be certain, I'm very comfortable, I'm a very sports person, I find a situation I'm playing a game, probably I see a photograph, I feel happy about it. So there's a personal fit between the situation and the person itself. So now, looking back at the total system, we simply say a situation and a person have a certain amount of correlation depending upon the past experience. If independently, situation would have given output B and situation would have given output C. But these two output gets now modulated by the situation and the person on B and C, and so the outcome becomes a different outcome at time T1. Now, after that, what is happening now? Because of the person, just now we gave the example of fighting, I would say, a battle scenario where bullets are flying left, right, center. At that time, person, there's a transaction in the person's situation. So it is a person has the effect on the situation, and situation has effect on the person. This is what is the famous because correlation interaction, transaction interaction. That is what people have been talking about it. This is a very single or entire profile variable of person situation matched together. That we have talked last scenario we talked about. Both are happy. So it will have consequences on intrapersonal and interpersonal adjustment. Intrapersonal is mental health. I'm looking at it, I feel happy with it. I'm intrapersonal, I'm very happy. So interpersonal. Interpersonal adjustment, if I find another good sports person, I would like to interact now, so I feel happy with the next person. So interpersonal adjustment changes. So thus, person situation fit can be seen as a linchpin that called vital concept in psychology. This is what is latest we talked about. Okay. Now the problem comes: how do people transition from one situation to another? Since, as I said, now a person has got effect on situation, and situation has got effect on a person. It means what? Situation itself changes. As I said, when you go on the battle, at that time I got only one bullet flying in the right center. So my situation was suddenly you'll find something else coming back, and then my situation changes. So situation change when the physical cue changes. We have already talked about cues. Pulse, we talked about it. When the physical changes, there is situation change will occur. When people change their perception of the situation, as I said, I gave the example of the snake. If the snake had bitten me earlier, or probably I was scared of the snake, naturally I would try and behave in a different fashion. On the contrary, if I find a snake, I take a normal jeeb, let it go. So my perception changes. So the people change their perception of the situation, and situation must be thought in terms of cues, characteristics, and classes. We have already talked enough on this subject. Situation change may be studied within the individual. They're called ideographic. Idea of things, examining, dynamic, network of situation, characteristics across the time when single person is present. That is ideographic. Within the individual, how does situation be studied by within the individual? That is how individual is going to act, react, and each person is going to act, react in his own way, depending upon his own characteristics. And between individuals, how do people, they call nomothetically. So across the board, means as a human, we have got certain universal law, universal way of acting. So the examining situation across chain, several persons, bulk of the people would act and react in a particular fashion, which is standard. That is what we call nomothetically. Situation change may be examined at the level of single variables or profile of variables. Many variables can afford change. We say whenever it can afford to change. Okay. Now, despite complexities, people show remarkable consensus in demarcating situation when given to. And suppose you record a video. That when the video changes from one scene to another, you can predict as a human, this is what is going to happen. That's about 80% chance that you will predict. It means that we all agree on the situation ends, how and when the next situation is going to come. Okay. Suppose, no, in a video, you have seen something, a thief is taking some items away. Naturally, you would expect he will be caught by police somewhere sometime and he will be punished. That is my expectation. That is what the things are going to be there. Now, the problem comes to why do situations change in first place? That is what is the most important thing. Situation change on their own and outside of the agency of a person. Means it may be because of situation change or something which is beyond my control. A person can also navigate, influence, and shape them to a certain degree. Why? As I give you the example, the better scenario, how do I change the situation is dependent on me. That is what I'm being trained for. I'm being trained for to counter, to react whenever unfolded circumstances, scene or situation comes into play. Okay. Now, what will happen? So the person changes the situation, navigation mechanism, and it can be done willingly or unwillingly. Willingly, when I want to say better scenario, willingly I would like to go in a particular predetermined fashion. But since enemy resistance has come, unwillingly I have to change the situation. I have to follow different situation. More passively or actively, depending upon individual characteristics and the personality, he will be active or passive. With intended or unintended effects. Sometimes you don't want to harm anyone, but it gets harmed. Maintaining versus terminating, changing. So this is how the situations are going to change. What is this? Now, say I would like to maintenance means remaining as normal. I keep an example, thermodynamics. Nature would like to remain in equilibrium. So we also like to preserve the situation that I encounter. I don't want to change it. But how does the change occur? Because you can construct, uniquely reconstruct a situation in a different way than before. Who reconstruct it? It is me and you. Depend on my own past experience, my own personality. I would also like to change. I change the perception. So my perception changes based upon my own personal effect. Second, evocation. Elicit is certain reaction from others in the situation. How does when I'm going, how are my men are going to behave in the better situation? That is, other people are going to affect, or how the enemy is going to there. So elicit certain reaction. So if I have fired a bullet, should I expect enemy also to react the same way or not? Now, selection, avoiding one situation, approaching, entering another situation. Suppose and again taking the clue from the better scenario, if I'm going on a particular approach, when I find the resistance, I would change the approach itself. So situation has changed. Next, modulating a previous situation in a certain way so that it changes. Modulating what? I say no. I just say no. You got when we speak, our voice gets modulated or on the carrier wave, and that's how the signal travels. Similarly, depending upon our own strength, weakness, and the person that we got it, the situation easily gets modulated or changed. Or actively creation is actively creating entire new situation. Depend upon sometimes the panic. You do not know what is to be done. So even there was a snake, and even if suppose you're going the night, you find a snake-like structure around there. That is harmless. But what happens? You think it's really a snake, your perception changes and run away thinking it's a snake. So what happened? You have created, there was no snake itself, it was a duplicate, maybe a plastic snake. And you have tried to sever it, cover it up the system. So that's created a new system. So each mechanism could enacted willingly on it, passively or actively, or intended or unintended. So you may not be. So all situations are going to change according to that one situation. This is how the situation are going to be there. Okay. Now, so this is how the Situation reaction is the matter of research, and a lot of research are still expected to be done way back from 2005 to 2000, when Rothman came into play. He's the person who has done a lot of work on this, and a lot of research are going to go about it. So some of the replicator 6 needs to comprehensively studied. Multifaceted organization, hierarchy-like personality tests will have to be designed for situation. We may, just like we got talk personality test, they may be situation traits, which we will be talking about in the future. Okay. Now, suddenly we have more research are required on the focus on situation as unfolding process rather than viewing them as a static entity. Because it cannot, no situation can be static. As I say, gave an example of the battle scenario. The situation keeps changing every moment to moment. So we have to think about what is the process, how do the situation unfold. Okay. So we have to design process-focused conceptualization situation. So we have to think situation also as a process. And a longitudinal research means what is the long-term effect? Means when you look at a person for 10 years, 5 years, that's how the situation characteristics of the parameter may have to be designed and developed. So this is how the various ways about it development are still expected in the field of situation. Research on psychological situation has been gaining traction and time, especially in the last decade, and it has comprehensively addressed the conceptualization, measurement, textual normalization, usefulness of different kinds of situation, and still many more exciting questions await which must be explored. Gentlemen, these are this series in which we have talked about the situation in totality. How does the situation affect a person? How a person affects the situation? How a situation changes from situation 1 to situation 2. I give you a class example now. A plastic snake can make create a situation of a real snake itself. How did it come? How the situation? What is the process situation? How the can there be many more categories, many more categorized, many more cues, characteristics, and purposes? So they are still matter of research which will happen on there. As far as SSV is concerned, gentlemen, understanding the situation is very, very important. As we have discussed, everything, all events in SSV is a situation by itself. As I said earlier, a psychologist creates a situation by giving you 11 pictures and 1 blank, and lets you to think of what you want to think about it by words, SRT, and even if we ask you to write about yourself, strengths and weaknesses, that is self situation, because depending, you want to impress a person on there. So your personal context changes what to write, what not to write. Similarly, in the GTO, from group discussion, group planning, progressive group task, half group task, command task, and final group task, everything is an event. It's an event. It's a situation. Including lecture situation, how to act and react is going to be there. And the question which is being asked by the interviewing officer itself is a situation. He's asking you about for your past. If this guy based upon the past, he's trying to extrapolate what is going to be present. Are you decaying? Is your performance increasing or decreasing? Method means, are you improving? Suppose you've done not very well, did not do very well in 10th. Fair enough. There may have been some situation, there must be some trauma at your home. But at 12th, you should have done better. If you have not done well again, then what happens? It means your certain traits are negative or are negative. That's why you're not able to sustain the performance. What do you do next? Have you improved in graduation? Have you get in so it means it is not what is the. We all are humans. We will have mistakes. We will have a strength. We will have weaknesses. It's no point. I always maintain that we should concentrate on our strength and try and work on the strength. And if I work on the strength, I will have no time to look at my weaknesses. And so weaknesses will still get quarantined in one way, in one corner. If there's a virus in a software, what do? You use the software to quarantine it if you can't kill the virus. Similarly, if you've got a weakness, nothing to worry about it. We're all humans. There was only one person who was who was a totally perfect human, that was Raja Purushottam Ram. Even Krishna is not Purushottam. Why? Because Krishna used Sam down that way to achieve his end result. He could do anything at any time. But Ram always followed the principle. He was most principled man. So hence, aim is to know yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses. If you have got time, do correct your weakness, but don't waste your time only correct weakness. Try and exploit your strengths. Working on a strength is what is most important. Okay, hope you liked it. And next we will talking about next video we will talk about what is trauma. Situation is the trauma itself is again a situation. How the trauma affects us. How are we going to affected by the trauma? What reaction do we have to know or we do in trauma? How do we get over it? That is what we do the next video on the series. Thanks a lot. Hope you liked it. Thank you again.